Hi guys, it's Olivia here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and right now it's the most wonderful time of the year on booktube. And no, it's not because it's Christmas and New Year's, it is because it's time for the videos such as the worst books of 2019 and the best books of 2019. I'm here to start off with the worst books of 2019, and I'm actually very pleased because this year I read 178 books so far. I'm probably going to finish my current read and I might squeeze in one more to make a whole number of 180. This is the most books I've ever read in a single year. Last year was the most that I'd previously ever read at 124, so you can see that I've just been reading more than I ever have this year. That being said, I only have 8 books on this worst list, and of those 8 books, 7 of them are 2-star ratings and only one of them is a 1-star rating, which just goes to show that this has actually been a pretty good reading year for me. And as I'm going to just talk about the 2-star ones in no particular order, and then lastly start with my worst read of the year, which was my 1-star, I just want to quickly say that it takes a lot for a book to get a 1-star from me. You kind of actively have to be trying to push harmful ideas or to be absolutely terrible, and you kind of have to work hard at being terrible to get a 1-star rating for me. So this was definitely the lowest of the low. But let's start with my 2-star reads. So the first one I want to mention is the rest of the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. I'm not exactly sure which ones I read this year. Like, I can't remember if I read the first 3 before and then it was 4, 5, 6, 7 I read this year, or just 5 to 7. But yeah, I did not enjoy reading that series. I listened to the audiobook by Stephen Fry, and Stephen Fry was a brilliant narrator, but even his amazing narrating skills couldn't heal how terrible these books were. And if I'm going to pick out one book that was utterly the worst in that series, it was definitely the 5th one. Can't remember the title, but that was the most slow-paced and boring Harry Potter book I had to read. Sorry, Harry Potter fans, let's just move swiftly along to another fandom which is going to be a bit mad at me, and yeah, you'll see more about this in my December wrap-up. But in December I read the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the first 2 books, The Fellowship of the Ring and The Two Towers, are going on this list because they were very boring and very slow paced. I mostly read these because I was going to New Zealand. I'm actually in New Zealand as of the time of filming this, and I'm going to be going to Hobbiton in a few days, and I felt like I read The Hobbit, so I might as well just quickly speed listen to the audiobooks of the trilogy before I went, and it was not the best idea because they were very boring. I'm not a huge fan of travelling books where you just like travel and you just face different obstacles along the way. I didn't expect both of them to be such heavily travel books, and then I didn't connect to any of the characters. I felt like the troubles they faced were not difficult enough, and it just was not engaging me at all. However, I am currently reading the 3rd one and it's proving to be a lot better than the previous 2, so there is still hope for me enjoying this last one. Next up, I've got one book that was required reading for university. Usually required reading and me are pretty okay, but there's 2 required readings on this list, and this one is Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. I did not like this book. In fact, I have a full rant review of the reasons why I did not like it, and if you want to know more about why Peter Pan was problematic for me, I'll leave a link to that up there and in the description box down below that you should definitely check out. But Peter Pan was just not the classic for me. I felt like it had some very harmful ideas. I wondered why it was still praised so much today, and I really didn't like the character of Peter Pan. In fact, I am on the team of the villain, which is Hook, and I feel like he was one of the better characters and the most developed, but he could have, had a lot more to do with him. But either which way, Peter Pan was not for me, and you should definitely check out that video to hear a bit more as to why. Then we have a book that probably should go on my worst reads of 2020 list, but I did read it this year, and that is Infinity Sun by Adam Silvera. So this one comes out in January next year, and I have an advanced reader's copy that I recently finished, so there'll be more about this in my December wrap-up. And this one follows 2 brothers, Emil and Brighton, and they live in this world where celestials exist, and celestials are born with natural powers, and then there's also spectres, and these are people who drink blood of celestials or creatures so that they can take on these powers. It's quite a harmful way of doing it, and they are evil and celestials are usually good, and there's quite a war going on between spectres and celestials. Emil is kind of someone who does not want to be a hero, and yet he ends up with these powers and he's thrust into the limelight, whereas his twin brother Brighton really wants to have powers, and yet he has none. So it follows them two and how they kind of get caught up in the war. And yeah, it was one of my most anticipated reads for 2020, and it was just a huge disappointment. I feel like fantasy is not really Adam Silvera's forte, and he should kind of stick to the contemporary that he's really good at, or try a different genre if he wants to expand. But the main problem with this book is that everything was just poorly executed. The world building poorly executed. The characters felt very 2D. The plot felt poorly executed and riddled with tropes and like stereotypes that just made it unexciting. He tried to include some different things in it, but it really wasn't working for me. And Brighton as a character just came across as so selfish that I didn't enjoy his storyline whatsoever. Then we have The Island by M.A. Bennett, and this was one of my most anticipated reads for 2018 that I didn't get around to until this year, and yet it was also a huge no for me. It's a Lord of the Flies retelling, and it's about Link. He is very bullied at school, and he wants to quit school, and he tells his parents this, and his parents say, okay, you can quit school, but you have to go on this one last summer trip. So he goes on this one last summer trip with all these people in his class who he really doesn't like, and the plane crashes and they end up stranded on an island where things go down. All I can say is that there were so many problems with this book. It's not even the retelling aspect that was bad, it was just that there was no likable character whatsoever. I thought I was going to like Link because he's a victim of really intense bullying, but no. What he does in response to this is very terrible and awful, and it was just horrific to read about. And as all the other characters are bullies, that means there were no likable characters whatsoever. The plot dragged in the middle, and then at the end it tried to give a like, oh, by the way, this is good parenting. No, that was not good parenting. And it also has one of those tropes shown that I really don't like, where somebody is homophobic because they are trying to cover up the fact that they identify as one of the LGBT plus identities, and I find that's a really harmful trope that I see happening sometimes in romances and in other books, because no, whether you are in the closet or out of the closet, it's no excuse for you to act homophobic. Homophobia is toxic. Next up, we have The Mysterious Affair of the Letter by Alex S. Hall, and Alex S. Hall is quite unique because he is an author who is going to be on my favourites list of 2019 and also makes it onto my worst list of 2019. If you know me, you'll know that I have favourite books and not particularly favourite authors, because many of the authors of my favourite books have also written some of the books that I dislike the most. The Mysterious Affairs of the Letter happens to be one of those. So Alex S. Hall typically writes new adult romance, but this is his venture into young adult fantasy, and like Adam Silvera trying a different genre, it just did not go well. The Affairs of the Mysterious Letter is a Sherlock Holmes gender-flipped fantasy retelling. So we follow Scheherazade, who is a female Sherlock Holmes, and she is very bisexual. And then you've also got the captain, who is the equivalent of Watson, and he is gay, I believe. He may be pansexual, but I can't quite remember. And yeah, he kind of ends up working for her, and he's very formal and stoic, and she's very outrageous and eccentric. And there's this mysterious letter which leads to a mystery happening. I felt like this one was just a mess. Nothing was explained fantasy-wise, which meant all these random things were happening, and we as readers can never know the stakes. We as readers never quite knew what was going on, and it was just very confusing, and I was entirely lost throughout reading that whole book. And it wasn't my fault, it was that the world building and the fantasy was done terribly. I also felt like the characters were I just didn't connect to them, I didn't really know them. And yeah, the outcome of the mystery was such a disappointment, not a recommend at all. We're coming to the end here, guys, so now we're on to the second last one, and that is my second university required read that was not a good one for me, and that is Gaudy Night by Dorothy Sayers. And this one is a murder mystery that happens at a university. Somebody gets murdered, and this person who is friends with the detective, so she's not the detective, she's friends with the detective, ends up being at the university at the time, and she ends up solving the mystery. And this one was quite revolutionary because you'd never really had a female-centric mystery like this. It's set at a female university, so all of the characters are female, and then you've got the female who's solving it, and yes, the detective does come in at the end to clear some things up, but it is namely a female mystery, a murder mystery, and incredibly boring. It's a huge book, over 500 pages, and it just drags all the way through. You could have cut that book in half and it still would have been a bit too long for the mystery that it was. I was really bored when I read that. And then last but not least, we have my 1-star read. I really have to struggle to bring myself to talk about this one because I literally finished reading it and then I erased it from my mind. I didn't enjoy thinking about it, I didn't enjoy talking about it, so that's why you didn't see a rant review for this one, but I'm gonna do it now, and that is Black Leopard Red Wolf by Marlon James. I was so excited for this book. I showed up on release day, I went down to London, I went to an author event where he was talking about the book, got my book signed, then I went home and I read the book and it was terrible. It was 600 pages that I had to drag myself through. I forgot to tell you what it's about. So this one, what is it about? That is a very good question. This one follows this main character, Wolf, and he has the senses of a wolf, like the sense of smell and stuff like that, and he has a best friend who is a shapeshifter, and they are given this particular quest to go and find this child. They live in this very large fantasy world which is very intricate, and it's based on African mythology and legend and things like that. That's really all there is to the plot, but that is the most loose interpretation of what this plot is about, because I really don't understand what this plot is about. It was a huge mess. It went everywhere, it went back and forwards, and betrayals happened and I didn't understand why they were happening. No character motivations. It was supposed to be this really like epic black fantasy, but it was such a headache to read. Like, the author didn't say anything straightforward. He would say like 2 different things, but he actually meant the reverse, and you were supposed to figure it out. And I'm all for books that have to make you think, like classics and such, but if you have to think that hard, it's too hard and it's not good. And the thing about this book is that it's supposed to be such a celebration of like black culture, you know, we're getting black fantasy, we're getting African fantasy, but it was so misogynistic. The way that women are treated in this book was absolutely awful, and no, it was really horrible the way that women were treated. And as well as that, there's some like very graphic, explicit scenes to do with death and murder, but also to do with sex, and some of them involve animals. And I get that there's a shapeshifter, but it was just all wrong and I was not happy reading that. So the misogyny and the explicit scenes were really a huge no-no for me, and then it was much too difficult to understand, and it was also very boring. I can't believe I read all 600 pages. I don't usually DNF, but this is one book that if I could reverse time, I would have DNF'd it from page 1. Ooh, and that's a bit of a rant review there, guys. That is it. Those are my worst books that I've read in 2020. I'm glad to get all that negativity off my shoulders and off my chest, and I'm ready to tell you about the 15 best books of 2019 in my next video. Leave a comment down below, what was the worst book that you read in 2019? Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss out for when my top books of 2019 comes out. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.